Hello everyone. So in today's video, I want to talk about the real reasons why many of us are into headphones to the degree that we are. And that is, of course, the deep sense of shame and embarrassment that we feel when it comes to our taste in music. And we don't want to inflict that upon the world around us. We're the good ones. Have you ever been on a bus or a plane or in some public space where somebody is blasting music directly from their phone speaker, and not only does it sound horrible, but their taste in music is even worse than yours? Yeah, don't be that guy. That guy sucks. No, instead we have these wonderful devices that make it so that our musical experiences are much more personal. I'm joking, of course. The real reason is because it can sound absolutely goddamn incredible when you listen to some truly exceptional headphones. Like, you can be transported into an entirely different dimension when you're listening to good sounding headphones. And that's what it's all about. And in today's video, it's the music that I'm going to talk about. So let's get into it. Okay, so as we all know, my favorite music to listen to is, of course, test tones. I'm a big fan of this band called Farina, and also this other band called Pink Noise. No, I'm joking. In this video, I'm going to go through my test tracks that I use and the reasons why I use them. And I'm also going to give you a list of some music that I just like to listen to. And I think some of that is music that just happens to sound good on headphones. So maybe you'll find it enjoyable as well. If you'd like to check out these tracks for yourself and listen along while you're watching this video, I've left a link to these playlists in the description below, along with playlists from some of the other folks on our team. And unfortunately, I'm not able to play these for you right now because we haven't yet figured out how to do that without getting the copyright nonsense. That sucks. But I'm going to explain the reasons why I use these test tracks and what I'm listening for with them. But just before we get going here, as always, these videos are made possible by Headphones.com. Headphones.com is a great place to learn about and buy headphones. It has a ridiculous 365-day return policy, as well as excellent customer service, as you can see from our good friend Sam here. And so remember to check out Headphones.com for your next audio purchase. Wow, the sun is really coming in here. This is going to be fun for lighting. The first one that I want to highlight here is a track called Little Person by Michael Walney. So Michael Walney is actually a piano player, and this is a jazz trio, but it's specifically the drums that I'm listening for because of the way that the drums are recorded. The bass drum in particular has a really solid sense of kick to it. So if I'm listening to something that is going to be able to reproduce that with a really good sense of impact and physicality, this track does a good job of revealing that. The next track that I want to highlight here is Change the World by Eric Clapton. And I'm not going to say here that this is the best music, but I'm very familiar with these. And my last caveat here is that these change over time. Like, I'm not set in stone on what these ones are. It's just that I've heard these on so many different headphones at this point that it's very easy to be able to compare how a headphone sounds to something that I'm very familiar with. And I recommend doing this. So Eric Clapton Chronicles, Change the World is one that I regularly go to. Its treble is a little bit on the brighter side of things. And if a headphone is weird or emphasized in the treble, like significantly emphasized in the treble, this will reveal that. So those tracks are often disqualifiers for percussive tones. I'm very picky about how my percussive sounds sound. The next track that I like to go to is Ting Val Trio's Beat. This is really good for getting a sense of how the mid-range behaves with respect to piano tones, because this is sort of a piano jazz ensemble group. And when I'm listening to this track, I'm listening for two different things. Number one is if there is any sense of sort of bluntedness to the sound, the piano here, the way the piano is handled, will reveal that, right? Whether this is like a particular recession or roll-off in some region of the frequency response. The other thing is ear gain. So we talk about ear gain a lot. Ear gain is where the ear amplifies frequencies the most strongly. But essentially that 1 to 3 kilohertz range, if it is meaningfully withdrawn in that region or meaningfully boosted in that region, this track will give you a sense of that with respect to the clarity of the piano tones and as they come across. The next track that I like to use is What Life Brings by Steven Wilson. And this is really more just for a general sense of the balance. This is a track that I find spans most of the spectrum. It kind of puts a headphone through its paces generally. Like, you get a lot of upper frequency content with, the cymbals and percussive hits, but you also get some really solid punchy bass as well with the way that this is recorded. And so it's a very full sounding track. The next one that I go through is a track called Code Cool by Patricia Barber. And the music here is definitely on the esoteric side of things. I don't expect people will enjoy this as much as I do, but it's really good for identifying issues with sibilance. So the S's, F's, and T's sibilance, that is, it's a very noticeable quality in this recording, in this album. And if you're listening to headphones that have, significant peaks between like 6 and 9 kilohertz, 6 and 10 kilohertz, this will let you know very quickly. Then, of course, I'm also going to recommend checking out Yoshi Horikawa's stuff. Now, this isn't actually that good of a reference track because it doesn't have a lot of sounds that people are that familiar with. Like, oftentimes I recommend people listen to vocal tracks because humans have a really strong sense of what the voice should sound like, what a human voice should sound like. These tracks don't really have that, but they're still fun. And they have a lot of really interesting panning stuff that goes kind of like from left to right and for how the sounds come in. They're also very revealing of high frequency information because of the way that, some of the transients come across there. There's sort of like an articulate quality to them, like something like bubbles in particular. And I personally find that this is best experienced with headphones that have fully flat linear bass extension, open back headphones that are going to have good channel matching and be very consistent for the in situ response. This gives a really good sense of what the panning is like, what that's sort of like. And people talk about this as sort of like imaging and, where the image placement is and how well defined and separated the images are. Then I also like to listen to an album called Charismatic Leaders by Wheel. Now, this is a heavy metal album. People often criticize us for focusing on measurements a lot, saying, well, music isn't test tones. But the thing is, you can actually you can measure headphones with music as well, and it gives you the frequency response. But in order to do that, you need to have music that is sufficiently full spectrum. And I find that heavy metal tracks are sometimes able to do that. This one's a pretty good example of that. But a lot of the music that I just happen to enjoy also kind of does this, so I wouldn't say that this is essential or anything like that. And I'm just going to touch on a few more here. 2049, that's from the Blade Runner soundtrack. This is great for sub-bass and infrasonic frequencies. So this actually will tell you if a headphone is excursion limited if you're playing it loud enough. Be careful with how loud you listen, of course. But because this contains content that is actually below the threshold of human hearing, that's where your excursion limits are going to hit first. So again, if you're listening to one of those Focal headphones, like the older Focal open backs out of a high output impedance source, or you're slapping some kind of EQ on it, this is a kind of track that will let you know where the clipping threshold is for your volume. Oh, and lastly, for test tracks, there's an album called From the Bush by Thomas Brossard, and the track that I listen to here is Dim the Light. And I use this because there is a tambourine sound in there, which it reveals if there's too much 5 kilohertz, 6 kilohertz kind of stuff going on. If there's a peak there, that for whatever reason, that particular sound, it gets me. Okay, now I'm going to get into the stuff that I just listened to for fun. This is at the end of the day after I'm done dialing in my headphones with EQ exactly how I want them. And yeah, like I'm joking about listening to test tones. Like I don't listen to test tones. The music that I like is music that challenges me, that demands my attention. For me, it needs to be something that I'm actively focused on, actively listening to. So number one for what I'm listening to right now is an album called Legend by Adam Baldich. This is a Polish violin and viola player. And this is some of the best recorded strings I've ever heard. It's truly insane. Like, even if you're not into this kind of music, the music is good. Like the musicianship is incredible, but it's also the recording quality here that if you have nice headphones, it will transport you to another dimension. It's insane how good this is. I don't think folks really realize how good strings can sound because a lot of the time they're not recorded that well. A lot of the time, like violins in particular, are kind of screechy or they sound distant. It's tough to find the sweet spot. This album does a fantastic job of strings, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Listen to that. And the other one that's also really good here is Portraits. That's coming out this year, but there's a couple tracks that are already released. Highly recommended. Another one that I listen to all the time is an album called Logos, which is a collaboration album with Ulf Wokenius, who is a jazz guitar player, and a flamenco guitar player, Gerardo Nunez. And it's this kind of dueling acoustic guitar flamenco thing with jazz and flamenco, and there's a cajon for the percussion. This is awesome. I love this kind of music. It's well recorded, it's fun to listen to, and the musicianship is insane. For more heavy stuff, Neobliviscaris, there's an album called Exo, and this is really weird stuff. It's really heavy and intense, but also there is a there's a violin part to it as well that it's weird, but I like it. And then for more heavy stuff, I'm going to shout out Gojira. There's an album called Magma, and in particular, there's a track called Silvera. That is a banger of a track right there. The next one I want to highlight is Hoist the Colors by the Wellermen. Now, this is some of the deepest vocal performance that you'll hear. I heard this first at Munich High End at one of the speaker setups. I think it was at the SVS booth where somebody suggested this song, and I went, oh my God, I need to put this on my playlist. Getting back into the jazz side of things, I'm a big fan of Esperanza Spalding. So Esperanza Spalding is actually a very well-known, very well-renowned jazz musician. She's a singer, but also she plays the upright double bass. The style is a little bit more on the avant-garde, so I would say if you're not into jazz, this might be a bit challenging to get into, but it's very good when you do. Pineapple Thief. Okay, I want to highlight this one because this track in particular, it's called No Man's Land. It's one of those tracks that kind of really builds up. It starts off kind of slow, and then it eventually gets into this really intense kind of like bass and drum section that when it hits, it hits. It's a good feeling. Up next is Murmuration from Gogo Penguin. All right, so Gogo Penguin is, I actually classify this kind of more like rock fusion. I don't know what else to call it, but like really well recorded piano and drums. If you have headphones that do a really good job of bass, this track is very, very good. And lastly, this is a weird one. I'm going to recommend an album called Storm Corrosion. Storm Corrosion is a collab between Michael Ackerfeld and Steven Wilson. It is weird, but it is one of those albums where you can listen to the whole album in one sitting, turn the lights off, and just focus on the music. It's an album that requires a certain amount of patience, but it is rewarding when you give it that patience. So I think you can get that there are a couple themes for me for the kind of music that I like, which is I like music with instruments, and this is just a me thing. Like, it's fine if you like electronic music or if you don't like music with instruments, but I've always been sort of drawn to the depth that a musical instrument can give you when it is recorded well and played back on good headphones. But the other theme for me is that my tastes span quite a range. I'll go from Gogo Penguin on the jazz side to, you know, Metallica. Like, I like music that is intense. I like music that forces me again to pay attention. Music that is like, hey, listen to me. And when I'm listening to it with, you know, really good headphones or headphones where I've got my EQs dialed in perfectly, it's an experience like nothing else. So I hope this has been an interesting experience for you guys. If you find this interesting, let me know. If you didn't, also let me know. But hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more about music here in the next little bit. The sun is in my head, right in my head. I hate it. But as I'm about to be blinded by the sun here and probably won't live to see another day, I'm going to start melting. Let me know what kind of music you guys like to listen to with your headphones. And hopefully we can get some music sharing going on in the comments. Or also join our community at forum.headphones.com. As mentioned, I have all of my test tracks linked there or listed there. And there will be some playlists on Spotify and Tidal if you guys are interested. But yeah, that does it for this video. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.